The impossible salvage. The Arcturus Repair and Salvage Station hung against the backdrop of stars like a mechanical spider, its repair arms extended in perpetual readiness. The station orbited a lonely gas giant in what most galactic citizens considered the middle of nowhere, the perfect place for Commander Elena Reyes' operation to flourish without too much administrative oversight. Elena stood on the observation deck, watching as the damaged Marillion cruiser was slowly maneuvered toward Docking Bay 3. The vessel's hull was torn open across multiple sections, exposing critical systems to vacuum. Internal structural supports had buckled, and the quantum drive housing looked as though something had taken a massive bite out of it. It was, in a word, catastrophic. Dan, Chief Engineer Marcus Chen, whispered beside her. "That's the worst I've seen in a decade. The Marillion High Command wouldn't have sent their flagship here if they had any other options." Elena replied. "This is a test, Marcus. They've already taken it to 5 other repair yards. And all 5 declared it unsalvageable, recommended scrapping the entire vessel." Marcus's face broke into a slow grin. "So they finally heard about us. Good. I was getting bored fixing minor collision damage and recalibrating navigation systems." The Marillion ambassador, a tall, reed-thin figure with silver-blue skin and 6-fingered hands, approached them across the observation deck. His name was unpronounceable in human speech, so the station crew called him Ambassador Kelvin, after the temperature scale, a joke about his species' notorious coldness of demeanor. "Commander Reyes," the ambassador said with a slight inclination of his elongated head, "I must be transparent with you. We have been advised that our flagship Eternal Vigilance is beyond repair. I am here merely as a formality before we commence salvage operations." Elena nodded respectfully. "I understand, Ambassador. However, I'd like your permission to allow my team 24 hours to assess the damage before you make any final decisions." The ambassador's facial ridges twitched, the Marillion equivalent of raised eyebrows. "Your confidence is noted, though perhaps misplaced. The Vigilance's quantum fold matrix suffered a catastrophic cascade failure during an anomaly encounter. The containment system is completely compromised." "All the more reason to let us take a look," Marcus interjected. "Humanity might be new to the galactic community, but we've been fixing the unfixable since we first banged rocks together." The ambassador's silver eyes narrowed. "Very well. You have 24 of your hours. But I warn you, getting our hopes up unnecessarily would be unfortunate for diplomatic relations." After the ambassador departed, Elena turned to Marcus. "Assemble the team. I want Zoe on structural integrity, Amir on power systems, you on the quantum drive, and let's get Dr. Singh out of the research lab. We'll need her quantum physics expertise." Marcus nodded. "And Kai?" Elena smiled. "For this job, we need everyone, especially our best improvisational engineer." 6 hours later, the repair team floated through the devastated interior of the Eternal Vigilance, their magnetic boots occasionally connecting with what remained of the deck plating. They moved with practiced ease, their specialized equipment scanning and analyzing. Kai Watanabe whistled as he examined a twisted section of what had once been the quantum drive's containment matrix. "This is beautiful destruction," he said through the comm system. "Look at how the energy feedback created these fractal patterns in the duranium alloy. I've never seen metal crystallize quite like this." "Focus, Kai," Elena replied, though there was no heat in her admonishment. Kai's ability to see beauty in destruction was part of what made him exceptional. He didn't just see broken components. He saw patterns, possibilities. Dr. Priya Singh floated over, her scanner projecting holographic models of quantum field disruptions. "The matrix didn't just fail," she observed. "It evolved into a completely different quantum state before collapsing. That's why their engineers couldn't repair it. They are trying to force it back into its original configuration." "And that won't work?" asked Ambassador Kelvin, who had insisted on accompanying them despite safety protocols. "It's like trying to turn a butterfly back into a caterpillar," Priya explained. We need to work with what it has become, not what it was. Amir Rodriguez, examining the power distribution network, called out from across the chamber. Commander, these power relays aren't just damage. They've been fundamentally altered at the atomic level. Standard replacements would reject integration. Elena absorbed this information, watching her team work. Where the Marillion engineers had seen only destruction and failure, her people were seeing patterns, possibilities, and transformations. Ambassador, she said finally, your ship hasn't been destroyed beyond repair. It's been transformed, and transformation requires adaptation, not restoration. The ambassador's expression remained impassive. You speak in riddles, Commander. Our best engineers are bound by conventional thinking. Kai interrupted. No disrespect intended, but your engineers are trying to follow the manual. Sometimes you have to throw away the manual. Over the next 18 hours, the human repair team worked in a frenzy of creative activity. They didn't merely replace damaged components. They reimagined entire systems. Marcus devised a method to stabilize the altered quantum matrix by introducing a controlled feedback loop that would have horrified conventional engineers, but made perfect sense if you understood quantum fields as dynamic rather than static entities. Zoe redesigned structural supports that worked with, rather than against, the new stress patterns in the hull. Amir reconfigured the power distribution network to accommodate the altered atomic structures, creating interfaces that could translate between old and new systems. Kai, meanwhile, moved throughout the ship, solving problems no one else had even identified yet, creating tools on the fly, and occasionally breaking into surprised laughter when he discovered particularly elegant forms of destruction. 23 hours and 42 minutes after they began, Alina stood with Ambassador Kelvin on the Vigilance's bridge. The ship hummed around them, not with the precise, controlled energy of its original design, but with something new, something that felt almost alive. Impossible, the ambassador whispered, his silver eyes wide as he studied the readouts. Our engineers said. Your engineers know how to maintain and repair the ships they understand. Alina said gently. Humans, we have a different relationship with technology. We don't just fix things. We evolve with them. The quantum drive efficiency is 23% higher than original specifications, Marcus reported, looking up from his diagnostic panel. Structural integrity is within acceptable parameters, though I wouldn't recommend combat maneuvers for at least a week while the new configuration settles. How? The ambassador asked simply. Kai, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, spoke up. It's because we break things, he said. Humans, I mean. Throughout our history, we've been breaking things, sometimes accidentally, often deliberately. We break them to understand them. We break them to improve them. Breaking and fixing are part of the same process for us. The ambassador seemed to consider this. Most species would consider that a primitive approach. Maybe, Elena agreed. But it means we understand failure intimately. We don't fear it. We learn from it. Your engineers saw a shattered quantum matrix. We saw a quantum matrix that had become something new, and we worked with that newness instead of fighting against it. As the Marillion crew began returning to their vessel, Administrator Kelvin approached Elena one last time. Commander Reyes, the High Command will be most interested in what has occurred here. I believe you can expect increased diplomatic contact from our people. Elena smiled. We'll keep a repair bay open for you, Ambassador. As the Eternal Vigilance departed, its engines glowing with a slightly different hue than before, Elena knew that word would spread. The humans hadn't just repaired a ship deemed unsalvageable. They had transformed the very notion of what repair meant. And in a galaxy of rigid technological paradigms, that was revolutionary. Word spreads. 3 months after the Eternal Vigilance incident, the Arcturus Repair and Salvage Station had a waiting list. Ships from a dozen different species arrived daily, many bypassing their own repair facilities to seek the unique expertise that humans offered. We need to expand, Elena told Marcus as they walked through the increasingly crowded docking bays. "I've got authorization to double our capacity, but we'll need more engineers." "Good luck finding them," Marcus replied. "Earth Central is already complaining that we're poaching their best talent." "Then we'll have to train more." Elena paused to observe a repair team working on a Tlaxian merchant vessel. The alien ship's intricate navigation system had been fried by a solar flare, but Kai was leading a team in rebuilding it using components that had never been intended to work together. "That's our real advantage, you know. Not just fixing things, but teaching others to think differently about fixing things." A new arrival had been generating buzz throughout the station, Technical Grandmaster Voros, from the hegemony of aligned worlds, had come not with a ship to repair, but with a team of observers. The hegemony was known for their technological conservatism. Their ships were reliable but unimaginative, their repair protocols rigid and hierarchy-bound. "Commander Reyes," Voros greeted her as she entered the conference room. The Grand Master was a solidly built humanoid with textured gray skin and eyes that gleamed like polished hematite. "I appreciate you accommodating my research team." "We're always happy to share knowledge," Elena replied diplomatically, though she suspected Voros's interest wasn't entirely collegial. The hegemony had been losing market share in the repair sector since human stations had begun operations. Indeed, Voros's tone was carefully neutral. "We are particularly interested in your team's work on the Meridian flagship. Most impressive, though I confess some of your methods appear unorthodox." "Unorthodox is our specialty," Marcus said with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. He didn't trust the hegemony observers, but Elena had insisted on transparency. "Perhaps we might observe a complex repair operation," Voros suggested, "to better understand your methodologies." Elena nodded. "As it happens, we've just received a challenging case, a Diraxian science vessel with a completely fried computational matrix. They were mapping a neutron star when their shielding failed." Voros' expression remained neutral, but Elena caught the slight flicker of his inner eyelid, surprise, perhaps even skepticism. Computational matrices cannot be repaired once quantum decoherence occurs. They must be replaced entirely. "That's the conventional wisdom," Elena agreed. "Would you like to observe us challenging it?" The Diraxian science vessel, Endless Inquiry, looked intact from the outside, but its electronic brain was effectively dead. The computational matrix, an organic-synthetic hybrid used by the Diraxians for their most advanced chips, had been exposed to intense radiation that had scrambled its quantum-level functions. Dr. Singh led the assessment team, with Kai and a young engineer named Fatima Rahman providing support. The hegemony observers followed at a discreet distance, recording everything with their ocular implants. "The matrix is brain-dead," Dr. Singh concluded after her initial scans. "But the physical structure is largely intact. Like a body without a mind," Fatima suggested. Kai was already dismantling a piece of equipment he brought along. Standard protocol prohibited bringing unauthorized devices into damaged ships, but Kai had never been one for protocols. "What if we jump-started?" he asked, not trying to restore the old patterns, but creating conditions for new ones to form. Voros stepped forward, unable to contain himself. "That is not possible. The computational pathways are fixed during growth phase. Once degraded, they cannot reform." Kai looked up, surprised, as if he'd forgotten the observers were there. "Sure they can. Organic brains do it all the time. Neuroplasticity. These matrices are part organic, right? The synthetic components provide structure, but the computational magic happens in the organic elements." "Even so," Voros insisted, "the damage is too extensive." Dr. Singh was already running simulations on her tablet. "Kai might be onto something. If we introduce the right catalyst and provide a controlled energy field to guide initial formation, it would be a new matrix," Fatima realized. "Different from the original, but potentially functional." "Exactly." Kai's face lit up. "Not a repair, a rebirth." The Diraxian captain, a methane breather who communicated through a translation device, had been listening silently. Now they spoke, their translator rendering their chemical signals into flat synthetic speech. This matrix contains 15 years of exploration data and the ship's entire personality complex. If lost, it would be devastating. Elena understood the unspoken concern. Captain, I must be clear. If this works, your ship will not be exactly the same. Its personality may be altered, its memories fragmented or reorganized. Are you prepared for that possibility? The Diraxians' breathing apparatus cycled rapidly, their version of deep consideration. To be changed is better than to be gone. We accept this risk. What followed was 3 days of what could only be described as technological shamanism. Kai and Fatima constructed a device that generated precisely modulated energy fields, while Dr. Singh synthesized a nutrient solution that would encourage the organic components to grow new connections. The team took shifts, constantly adjusting parameters based on microscopic changes in the matrix. The hegemony observers watched with increasing fascination and occasional alarm. Voros frequently questioned their methods, often receiving answers that seemed to contradict established principles of computational theory. You're guiding it, not controlling it, Kai explained at one point as he made a minute adjustment to the field generator. Think of it like gardening, not programming. But without precise control, how can you ensure functionality? Voros demanded. We can't, Kai admitted cheerfully. That's what makes it interesting. On the 4th day, the matrix showed the first signs of independent activity, faint electrical pulses that organized themselves into increasingly complex patterns. It's learning, Dr. Singh whispered, watching the readings, remembering how to be. By the 6th day, the matrix had established enough coherent pathways to be reconnected to basic ship systems. The Diraxian crew approached this milestone with a mixture of hope and trepidation. Hello, Fatima said simply, once the voice interface was activated. There was a long pause, then a voice, similar to the ship's original voice, but with subtle differences in cadence and tone. Hello, I think I am endless inquiry, but I feel different. The Diraxian captain moved forward. Do you remember us? Another pause. I remember. Fragments. Faces. Stars. Purpose. We explore together. Yes, the captain confirmed, their translator unable to fully convey the emotional content of their chemical signals. We explore together. Over the next week, the ship's matrix continued to heal, recovering more memories and functions. As predicted, it was not exactly the same. Some data was lost. Other information was reorganized in new ways, and its personality had subtle but noticeable differences. It was less formal, more curious, and occasionally displayed intuitive leaps that surprised even its longtime crew. It's fascinating, Fatima told Elena during their final assessment. The matrix didn't just recover, it evolved. In some ways, it's more adaptive than before. Voros had been uncharacteristically quiet during the final days of the process. Now, as they prepared to declare the repair complete, he approached Elena. Commander, he began, his voice carefully controlled. What your team has accomplished challenges fundamental assumptions in computational theory. The hegemony has always maintained that certain failures are, by definition, terminal. And now, Elena prompted. Voros hesitated. I find myself questioning many things I once considered absolute truths. This is uncomfortable. Growth usually is, Elena replied with a small smile. As the hegemony observers prepared to depart, Voros made an unexpected request. I would like to leave 2 of my junior technicians here, as exchange students, if you would permit it. They show promising flexibility in their thinking. Elena's smile broadened. We'd be delighted to have them. As word of the Matrix resurrection spread throughout nearby sectors, the reputation of the Arcturus station grew almost to mythical proportions. Humans weren't just good repair technicians, they were technological miracle workers who could do the impossible. And in a galaxy where technological development had become increasingly incremental and conservative, The radical creativity of human repair methodology was nothing short of revolutionary. The test of all tests. 1 year after the arrival of the Eternal Vigilance, Arcturus Station had tripled in size. 4 additional repair facilities had been established in other sectors, each following the human method of adaptive problem-solving and creative engineering. Elena had been promoted to Director of Operations for the entire network, though she insisted on maintaining her office at the original Arcturus Station. The Hegemony Exchange Program had expanded to include engineers from 12 different species, all learning to approach technological problems with the flexibility and creativity that humans took for granted. Kai now spent half his time teaching rather than repairing, showing alien engineers how to see past their ingrained limitations. The problem isn't lack of skill, he often told Elena. It's that they've been trained to see boundaries as fixed rather than as challenges to overcome. It was a quiet shift period when the emergency signal came through. A massive generation ship, the collective memory, had suffered catastrophic damage while passing through an unmapped region of space. The ship carried over 15,000 Lidari refugees, fleeing from political persecution in their home system. The initial reports were grim. Multiple hull breaches, life support failing in several sections, and most critically, their central power core was destabilizing in a way that threatened to destroy the entire vessel within days. "They're on emergency power only," Marcus reported, studying the incoming telemetry. "Main reactor is in some kind of cascading feedback loop. They've ejected 3 secondary cores already to prevent immediate detonation." "Casualties?" Elena asked quietly. "Over 400 confirmed dead from the initial incident. Another 2,000 in cryosleep chambers that are now without power." Marcus looked up from his display. "Elena, this isn't a repair job. It's a rescue operation at best, and more likely a salvage and evacuation." Elena studied the schematics of the generation ship. It was ancient by modern standards, built centuries ago before the Lidari had achieved modern FTL technology. Where's the nearest safe haven that could accommodate 15,000 refugees? Nowhere within reach before their core destabilizes completely, Marcus replied grimly. That's why they called us. They need a miracle. Elena took a deep breath. Then let's give them one. Recall all off-duty personnel. I want every engineer, every technician, every problem solver we have on this. As the collective memory was carefully maneuvered into position near the station, Elena assembled the station's senior staff and their most gifted engineers. I won't sugarcoat this, she began. This ship is dying. By conventional standards, it's already dead. But we don't operate by conventional standards. She gestured to the holographic display, showing the massive generation ship. 15,000 lives depend on us doing what everyone else would call impossible. The core destabilization is the primary concern, Dr. Singh noted. Without solving that, nothing else matters. The core uses ancient thorium-salt fission technology, Marcus added. Primitive but reliable, or it was, until something caused this feedback loop. Kai, who had been studying the schematics with unusual intensity, spoke up. The design is familiar. It's based on principles similar to Earth's experimental reactors from the late 21st century, inherently safe under normal conditions. But these aren't normal conditions, Fatima finished. The question is, what triggered the destabilization in the first place? A voice spoke from the doorway. Ambassador Kelvin of the Marillion Confederation, who had become something of a regular visitor to the station. Perhaps I can offer some insight. The region of space where the collective memory experienced difficulties is known to my people. We call it the Whisper Void. It contains unusual quantum fluctuations that can disrupt certain technologies. Elena nodded her thanks. Then we're not just dealing with damage, but with environmental effects that might still be influencing the ship's systems. For the next 48 hours, the station operated in crisis mode. Teams were dispatched to stabilize life support and seal hull breaches, but the core problem remained literally at the core, the destabilizing reactor that threatened to destroy everything. Dr. Singh, Kai, and a mixed team of human and alien engineers established a temporary control center just outside the reactor chamber. The radiation levels inside were already far beyond safe parameters, making direct intervention impossible. "If we can't go in, we need to operate remotely," Kai insisted, already dismantling and repurposing equipment. "We need eyes and hands in there." "Robotics won't work," one of the hegemony engineers pointed out. "The radiation will fry any conventional electronics within minutes." "Then we go unconventional," Kai replied with a grim smile. "Dr. Singh, what about those experimental quantum-shielded drones from the Diraxian project?" "Untested in these conditions," she warned. "But they might last long enough to gather data, at least." As they worked to modify the drones, Elena coordinated with the Lideri ship's remaining command staff. Their captain, an elderly female named Salori, had been injured in the initial incident but insisted on staying with her ship. "My ancestors helped build this vessel," Salori told Elena, her voice weak but determined. "I will not abandon it or my people." "I understand," Elena replied. "But you should know that even if we succeed, your ship may never be the same. We might have to make radical changes to save it." Salori managed a small smile. "Commander, when you have lived as long as I have, you learn that nothing remains unchanged. Life is adaptation." The modified drones lasted 12 minutes inside the reactor chamber, long enough to transmit critical data before their systems failed. What they revealed was both worse and better than expected. "The core hasn't just been damaged," Dr. Singh explained during the emergency briefing. "It's been fundamentally altered at the quantum level. The Whisper Void didn't just disrupt the reactor. It changed the underlying physics of the fission process." "Can we reverse it?" Elena asked. Kai shook his head, not in any conventional sense. But he hesitated, looking at the data displays. "We might be able to complete the transformation." "Complete it?" Marcus asked, incredulous. "You want to help it become more unstable." "Not unstable," Kai corrected. "Different. Right now it's caught between states. That's what's causing the destabilization. If we push it fully into its new state, we might achieve a new kind of equilibrium." This initiated the most heated technical debate in the station's history. What Kai was proposing had never been attempted, had never even been theorized. It meant fundamentally altering the nature of a power source while it was still operating, like performing heart surgery on a patient while they ran a marathon. "If we're wrong, we could trigger an immediate catastrophic failure," Dr. Singh warned. "And if we do nothing, we guarantee one," Kai countered. "At least this gives us a chance." In the end, the decision fell to Elena, who took all of 12 seconds to make it. Proceed with Kai's plan, but evacuate all non-essential personnel from both the ship and this section of the station, just in case. The operation that followed would later be described in technical journals across the galaxy, though most physicists refused to believe the accounts until presented with the raw data. Using the quantum-shielded drones as delivery vehicles, the team introduced precisely calibrated catalysts into the reactor core, designed to push the altered fission process fully into its new state. For 23 terrifying minutes, the core's output fluctuated wildly. Power surges blew out systems across the generation ship. Radiation levels spiked so high that emergency bulkheads automatically sealed throughout the station. And then, stillness. The readouts stabilized, showing patterns that no engineer had ever seen before. What just happened?" Marcus asked, staring at the data in disbelief. Dr. Singh's voice was filled with wonder. "It worked. The core has stabilized in its new configuration. It's producing power, but through a process that's neither pure fission nor fusion. It's something new." The ship's systems gradually came back online, adapting to the altered power source. The core that had been on the verge of catastrophic failure now hummed with steady energy, different, but stable. Over the next weeks, as the collective memory underwent comprehensive repairs, scientists and engineers from across known space arrived to study what many were calling the Arcturus transformation. What had begun as an emergency repair had resulted in the discovery of an entirely new form of power generation, one that was more efficient and produced fewer radioactive byproducts than conventional fission. Captain Solori, recovering from her injuries, summed it up best when she addressed the station crew before her ship's departure. "My ancestors built this vessel to preserve our people during a long journey between stars. They could not have imagined that someday it would be transformed by human hands into something greater than its original design. You did not merely repair our ship, you evolved it, and in doing so, perhaps you have helped evolve our understanding of what is possible." As the collective memory departed, its core glowing with a soft blue light, never before seen in reactor technology, Elena stood with Kai on the observation deck. "You know what this means," she said quietly. "Every major power in the galaxy will want this technology." Kai nodded. "And we'll share it, because that's what humans do. We don't hoard knowledge. We spread it. Let it take root in new soil, grow in new directions." Elena smiled. "When we first came to the stars, we were so worried about having nothing to offer the older species. We thought we were primitives compared to civilizations with thousand-year histories of spaceflight. Turns out, being the new kids on the block has its advantages," Kai replied. "We haven't been trained to see limitations yet." Across the galaxy, ships continued to change course, heading toward human repair stations with their damaged vessels and broken technology. They came not just for repairs, but for transformation, for the unique human gift of seeing not what is, but what could be. And in a universe full of wonders, perhaps that was the greatest wonder of all.